Hi, everyone.
Hi. How's everyone doing?
Doing good.
Tuesday. Not a special day.
It's recording.
Oh, it's recording? Cool.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're good.
Hey.
Awesome. Hey everyone. Thanks for joining. All right.
Let's maybe, do we want to give it a minute or we can just start off by maybe introduce ourselves?
Yeah. You want to go first?
Sure. Well, hey everyone. I kind of already introduced myself a little bit about my current role, but I think what I'm more interested in sharing is kind of the transition that I've made from product design to UX design and how I'm really seeing the parallel between the two worlds that are rather similar. So I mentioned it a little bit. I actually study product design for both my undergrad and my master's, and I was primarily focusing on the physical product design, but I also started doing some digital product design when I was in school. And then I had an opportunity to work at Hasbro as a toy designer. But as I reflected more on that experience, I realized a lot of times I was really designing the play experience, like the interaction that I want the kids to have when they're interacting with the toys. So I think it's been really interesting to kind of reflect back on what I did at the time and think of how it relates to my day-to-day job I have today. But I guess fast forward a little bit, I went back to school, and that's when I really decided to transition into UX design because as a designer, I always want to create as much impact as I can. And I feel like for UX design, you get to, well, I think it really depends on like the comparison you're making, but I think for UX design, you really get to create a larger impact because the services and the products that you're creating will really be in the hands of many people compared to just a product on the shelf that you don't know where it's going to end up being in a couple of months. So yeah, so I'm here today to like happy to answer any questions that you have about UX design, product design. And I'm also really interested in learning more about Sujan's journey and his experiences.
Yeah. Sure. I am Sujan, like I mentioned before. I'm actually originally from Nepal. I moved to the United States about almost 6 years ago. It's been quite a journey. I used to work as a interaction designer back in Nepal, doing a lot of front end stuff, uh, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery, stuff like that. Nothing revolutionary, but I was in this space. I was in technology, but I started getting more into design, and that's when I decided to pursue a master's degree, and I moved to America with a suitcase, which I almost lost. It's a fun story in itself too. But yes, I went to Jefferson. Graduated in 2016, and my first role out of college was at Think Company. Even though it's an agency, I had the opportunity to work with an exceptional team at Xfinity Mobile. So at Comcast, it wasn't out, it wasn't public yet. So it was very interesting to be working on something that nobody knew about for 2 months. They had been working on it for 3 years, but it was massive. When it did come out, immediately we had like 200,000 people sign up. So like you're working on something that hundreds of thousands of people are using, and like for like let's be honest, people are complaining about as well because it's a new product. So it I went from designing small things for smaller clients that a handful of people use, to designing a product that hundreds of thousands of people used, whether they liked it or not, whether they hate it. It was very very mind-boggling to you know like just experience the sense of scale when it came to product design. You have so many people with so many different life experiences, with so many different backgrounds, especially with like consumer products or like these services, especially. It's really hard to comprehend until you're there. right? After that, I moved to work in URBN, so working for like fashion, massive retail, e-commerce business, millions of people on the website every single day. Like millions of dollars in revenue every single day on the website. And it was a very different experience, somewhat similar because again the scale. I mentioned scale quite a bit because it's the one thing that did attract me to pursue product design. I've always wanted to design things or create things that millions of people use ever since I was a kid. So that's always been a fascinating part of product design. I've been doing design for a long time. But the more I worked on design, the more I started to see, the pain points of the industry itself, how we work. We spend so much time trying to create awesome experiences for people. But our own experiences, the way we work ourselves, isn't the best. There are issues with how we communicate amongst teams, across teams. There's issues with collaboration. There's issues with efficiency in work and delivering projects, and that's where I started falling in love with design systems. It's this a great way to sort of solve these issues. Design systems, people often confuse it for a pattern library or a UI component, or sketch file or Figma library. It's not just that. Those are just artifacts, but it's this massive, massive process. It's a product in itself. It's got processes, it's got governance. It's all about people, very people centric. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that as part of my job since November at Express Scripts. So I mentioned I work with a awesome team. I work with two designers, two engineers, content strategists, UX researcher, accessibility. We're a small team, but we work with 5 or 6 other teams and help them. And these are 5 or 6 design teams. There's like hundreds of engineers that we work with. And like again, Express Scripts, big company, lots of products. They're constantly pushing out features, solutions. They're working on this new rebrand. They're working on releasing a new brand itself. So there's massive, massive things happening. But my team is really at the center, trying to make sure we're enabling our teams to get to the market faster by repurposing things that they can whenever possible, or by helping them come to solutions faster, quicker, by pulling in insights that we've uncovered in the past. So we're really that glue that's holding them together, I guess, in a sense. But that's one of the reasons why I enjoy what I do. It's very in the weeds, but it's very, very satisfying.
That's awesome. Sujan, I actually recently finished a really big project for a design system based project. So I was leading that part. I really resonated with what you said about how design system is also a product that is designed for people. Because so I think maybe we can give the audience a little more context about the design system, because I actually learned quite a lot from my recent project about design system. I think it does comes down to this product that is serving a multidisciplinary team. So I think it will be used by UX designers who will be pulling patterns from the design system, so that, say for example, a button, like you want the button to look consistent across all platforms, especially if you're designing for mobile, my gosh, tablet, and the web version all across. So I think it's important to have this level of consistency, but also I think you're also going to be working with the branding team to really think about like what kind of tone and what kind of visual language that you want to use in the design system. But also more importantly, if you are looking into implement the design eventually into production, then you're also working with the UX developers who will be pulling all the assets and will be inspecting from the design system to ensure that like they have the right information to build this product. So yeah, I think I really resonate with the product, or when you said it's a product, because I guess I never really put it that way. But now that I think about it, I really think that UX design and also, like I said, product design, a really big like a big commonality that I'm seeing between these two industries is the people part, because you are like, as a UX designer or as a product designer, you're going to be working with multidisciplinary team all the time, and you're kind of in the center where you get to communicate. My fingers are disappearing, but you're communicating with like multiple groups of people to really help everyone understand, like to align everyone, and then to set expectations so that you're always on the same page moving along. But yeah, I just wanted to want to circle back on that word that you mentioned, which was fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Did anyone have any questions about anything that we've mentioned? Yes, Lydia.
I know that Danielle, you were saying that you kind of have done both, like your job title was both UX designer and product designer. I guess, Sujan, I forget what your I know I was listening to what your background was, but I feel like you said front end more than just straight up UX.
I used to do front end, but I'm now product designer.
Right,
Yeah.
and now you're in product design. Okay, right. I was listening. I promise.
No worries. Yeah.
So I guess Danielle, I'm asking you specifically because you've had both job titles, but like, you know, I'm seeing, like, while job searching, like I'm seeing both job titles, and like a lot of the time all the skills are overlapping. So like, what really makes the difference between them? Is it something as simple as like a UX designer is also expected to like do research or do UI, which, you know, isn't great, the best practice, but like I'm just curious what, and both of you can answer, but what you really think is the difference between product and UX design?
I can quickly go first, and I think, yeah, that's a great question. And I think for me, because I started off by working in the physical product design, but now I am seeing a lot of companies, like digital companies, are putting out the product designer role out there, which is it can get a little confusing. But I guess from my experience, product design. Well, again, from my experience, product design used to be just focusing on physical product design. So it does require a certain set of skills, where it asks you to like create 3D models, and you will talk with model artists and engineers. So in a sense, it is different, but I think, like I mentioned, again, you are still kind of sitting in the center of this room, and you're communicating with a room of people with different titles and backgrounds, and you're really trying to have everyone communicate with each other. And then, so that's my background. But from what I'm seeing, like right now on the job market, what companies are really saying about product design is, I feel like they are more it's mostly for companies like the in-house companies. They are focusing on like one specific product, where they have a product with a lot of verticals. Is it verticals? Yeah. And I think that's really interesting to see how like companies are applying the same processes, but some companies, especially in-house, are more focused on like specific products, whereas UX designers, I feel like I think I see it more in like a consulting setting, which is where I am. But I don't think I have a straight answer to this, because it is confusing. It's very confusing, and there's still.
And I'm also just I'm wondering if people are just like like it's a misnomer, the way that like people call you like, I'm hiring a UX UI developer. And it's like, well, that's 4 jobs. Like that's not a thing. So I'm wondering if that's part of it, is like it, because I understand a product designer is like, you know, I'm designing this physical phone or whatever is like a physical thing, but then I'm seeing so many digital product designers that, and maybe you're saying it is just focused on one giant, like Vanguard has one certain product that they're trying to ship or whatever. So that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
John, you had a question.
Yeah, I can relate a lot with Daniel because I used to be an industrial designer before moving to UX, and then the UX the industry itself stole the word from the industrial design to the product design. Anyways, yeah, I did have a question for Sujan. So I want to understand, like, more I read about design system, I understand it's more of the people thing, processes thing, and the organizational things, right? But then when somebody's like learning, how do we like approach it? And there's another question to it. Like if I'm in an organization already who is like talking about building a design system, how do I like make myself skillful to become resourceful to that?
Could you repeat your first question?
Yeah, like when I'm learning design system on my own, where I don't really have no access to the organizational stuff, how do I like approach learning that part?
Well, fortunately, now there's a lot of resources online. When I started learning about it, it's not like it's new, right? It's design systems. It's not new. Like people have been doing it for years. Like it's just been called different names, and a lot more companies have just like started using design systems as a term to get more traction. But it's not new at all. And with a lot more companies adopting this desire to create design systems in house, they've seen value. A lot of people have been like writing more about it or speaking more about it. There's whole conferences about design systems, and a lot more people are paying attention to it, right? So if you go on Medium, type design systems, you're gonna get thousands of articles, versus like a couple dozen when I like couple years ago when I was like trying to look into it, right? So the internet has been like exceptionally wonderful in terms of like resources to self learn, but there's also communities, right? There's a whole community of Slack, with called this, it's just design systems, and you can join, anybody can join, and there's thousands of people all over the world building design systems. There's engineers, designers, researchers, accessibility specialists. Anybody can join that group, and that's been super helpful as well, because you get a sense of because I'm working on the design system for a large company, but what is it like to work on design system for a small company or an agency, right? You're building a design system for an agency, a client of yours. There's people working on that kind of stuff in that community. So like if I had certain questions about that, then I can just like DM them and be like, hey, I had a question about this particular thing that I wanted to learn more about. I can't find anything about it online because nobody's written about it. So I can just like tap on this person, and then like I can ask them questions. I've been doing that a lot too. I have several questions about the technology side of design systems because I'm very design leaning now. So every time I have a question about technology, I always end up going to the community and asking them questions. Hey, I'm thinking about this thing. Am I thinking the right thing? And like how do I talk to the non-tech people about this very technical thing that I'm really not, really not qualified to talk about, but I want to be able to talk about anyways, because technology, the tech teams don't necessarily have that sway on the XD side. So community has been great, community and just writing resources. It's been great, and just being able to go to conferences or even meetups. There's a lot of meetups. There's a lot of webinars happening more often. There's a ton of books that I could recommend to. So there's a lot of material now that someone who's wants to get a good sense of design systems can easily become very very skilled. The other side of like how do you start being involved in your company's work with design systems? Like it doesn't take too much. Like if your company has a sketch library or Figma library, start contributing to it. That's easy. That's as easy as it gets. Like that, and that's the part that a lot of teams find hard. We're having a huge challenge with contribution and adoption. That's always a big challenge for design systems. People generally hate being enforced things on them. People tend to see design systems teams as the design system police, which we are not, and the fun killers. But it's really about community. It's one of our principles as well with our team: community over control. And as part of that community, you can share your ideas to whoever is creating the system, and that's how you can start being involved. And if you want to be more involved, I guess that's a conversation that you have with your manager about, hey, how can I start contributing to this project more? You might have other priorities. When I was working at Xfinity Mobile, I was also contributing part of my time every week on design systems. So I was able to work that arrangement out with my manager. So maybe like 10 hours a week you spend working on your sketch library or Figma library, or you work with engineers to implement certain things. So that's a way that you could go about it.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
I want to quickly turn the mic to the audience. I'm really curious to hear like where you're all coming from. I mean, not location wise, but like your background wise, and like what kind of drew you to this room. I'm really curious, and like no pressure if you don't feel like speaking or turning on your camera. Any volunteers?
I'll go. Sure. So I was a special ed teacher for 5 years, and so I kind of got up close and personal with that design, just working with my students. I worked with the deaf and hard of hearing, so accessibility was a big issue that they faced all the time. And so, I decided to kind of switch over into this sphere because I felt like I had a lot of interest already, and I just felt like I could make more of a difference. So, I chose this room just because I just wanted to know the difference between UX and product design, because in the job market you're seeing so much of both, and I just wanted to clarify. And I'm also curious about how that experience differs from that of UX designers, because I've been mentors in UX design and some front end development, but I don't think I've ever really sat down and spoken to a product designer to understand what their experience is like. So I'm currently contracted through a small startup in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and I'm just like a UX consultant. So I'm not technically a product designer, but like maybe I am, who knows?
Yeah, it really depends on the company. You might have been working as a product designer this whole time. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, Lydia. Anyone else want to share?
I'll share. I'm Roxanne. Hi, everybody. And I have a background in engineering, CAD, GIS, but I've been teaching. I was also in education for quite some time, but early childhood, which can be like special ed in some ways, depending on the age. And I wanted to get back into a technical field. So I did a boot camp for 8 months with Thinkful, and I graduated a couple months ago. And I'm trying to get involved in more communities like PhillyCHI and a couple other Discord servers and other communities. And, I'm looking for a full-time UX gig in design. I'm more focused on design than research. I seem to be called in that direction. So right now I only have like a couple like small freelance gigs, paying very little. So I'm just trying to learn more and eventually land a full-time job.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, hopefully that will happen sooner than later.
Yes.
Ryan, I know you had your hand raised. You want to share something or question?
Yeah, I'll share my background. So similar to Roxanne, I was actually a civil engineer and started to not like it so much and wanted to still impact people's lives. So I went into UX design. I'm currently finishing a boot camp as well. So wrapping that up. And yeah, like Lydia said, I really just wanted to learn the difference between UX designer and product designer. I kind of have a question. So it seems like product design is more specific to larger companies that have other people in their teams, whereas UX designer is more for like a smaller company that needs to do a little bit of everything. So do you share that view? Like, do you think that product designers are really catered towards larger companies like EY or IBM, something like that?
I have very strong opinions when it comes to like job titles. Generally, I think they're arbitrary and people really don't know what they're talking about a lot of times. It's just bullshit. My internal job title is what, product strategy senior advisor, which means nothing to nobody, right? If this job, I found it because I knew somebody. If I saw this LinkedIn post, I wouldn't have applied because I don't know what it means. So there are a ton of job titles out there, and it does seem like product designer is is very common term in larger organizations. It's very popular in Silicon Valley for sure. The big four, they do use product designer as term, minus Amazon. They use UX designers as the job title. So it's very different, right? Like regardless of the scale, the size, the title doesn't mean as much. It's what I'm noticing. It's like, but depending on where you go, what kind of work you do, right, your responsibilities and what's expected out of you is different. So when I was doing a couple of smaller projects for clients at Think Company, it was a short-term project. You had a specific deadline, and you're only working with your internal team at Think Company, your other designers, whoever the engineer is, and your internal project manager. The way you work is very different. But when you're in-house, and regardless of whether you're called a product designer or UX designer, UX architect, all of that, you might be expected different things. At URBN, we had to have some kind of like business knowledge or expertise, or I guess we were expected to lean more on that side as well. We were expected to go horizontal, not have as much depth, which I think could be very common, because you have to learn to work with a lot of people, right? And you have to really understand how your business works. I had to really understand how e-commerce retail works, which might not be true for if you're working as a UX designer at a consultancy, because you're working on multiple projects. You can't really like develop that in the breadth of knowledge. And the same thing with Express Scripts. I'm having to learn a lot about pharmacy, healthcare. Obviously, I knew it sucks anyways, but it's like I had to learn still a lot about pharmacy and pharmaceuticals and benefits and stuff like that, which I probably wouldn't have had to if I was working as a UX designer at an agency. So like I think the real thing is like an agency versus like in-house is really the thing. The title doesn't really matter, because if you're at an agency, shorter contracts, shorter projects. You could have a long project too, but you might not be expected to learn as much about the industry. You might not be able to work with as many people as you do as unlike like if you're in house and working as a product designer. Colleen, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I don't. Do I have to hit a button for my hand to go down, or?
I think so. I think you had to click it again.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So I've been in healthcare design for 19 years, and I started out in graphic design, and then I got into web design. I got my certification for that from Temple University, and then I just completed the UX design boot camp through Springboard, and which was really cool because they gave you, that's the opportunity to have an internship connected with it as well. They called it industry design project, but yeah, it was pretty cool. And I just realized like the more I've been in design, I really love healthcare designs specifically, but the more I've been in design, the more I realized that my interest really lies in solving problems for users and meeting users' needs and exploring solutions, strategy, that kind of thing. So that's what inspired me to get my UX design certification, and I am really interested about product design. Also because I have been looking at job listings, and I see some of them are listed as UX designer and product designer, but it doesn't really seem too much different in the responsibilities. So I was just really curious to see what you had to say about that.
I think Sujan said it perfectly. I agree. Like the job title doesn't really do much, but rather it's like between in-house design versus agency or consulting, because I currently work in consulting and I really enjoy the breadth of work that I get to work on. But eventually I would like to have some experience. I did in-house for a year or so at Hasbro, and I got bored really quickly because like every day you go into the office, you're looking at the same thing. You're just like improving like one little thing every day. So it really depends on like what you want to get out of your experience and what kind of impact that you want to create. And but I highly recommend everyone getting and experiencing both in-house and consulting.
Yeah, I can add to that because like when I was in an agency, like you work on a project and you see that, and it's like a big accomplishment. In-house, like you work on like tiniest things, and it's released every week or every other week, and it's like, okay, I made this thing like less blue, and that's your release, and then you tell people, oh, you know, like this is what I worked on the last quarter. You know, I made this thing less blue. In my case, it's more accurate. Maybe not in anybody else's case because design systems. But it's like that. You know, the work you accomplish. You know, it might seem very different coming from like an agency versus in house. Chong.
Hi.
Hi, friends. Hi. So I have something to add, and I totally agree with you both. So I'm Chong. I'm a product designer at Comcast, and I have a former chair of PhillyCHI. And it's kind of like great to see all of you guys here. I think it's a lot of things that like Danielle and Sujan mentioned. It's like awesome things about what is different between UX designer and product designer. But on my point of view, there's UX designers kind of like sit under product design umbrella, because at some point for me, it's really up to my title is, again, title is bullshit. Again, totally agree with Sujan here. It's really up to you guys to define yourself. And like, if you are hey, I really into product design, like it's the world where I want not only advocate for the user, but also work like think about the business side of it. Like, how could I market that product? How could I work with marketing people to bring awareness to that product? So how could I educate people how to use my product itself? So that all about the product as a whole. So as how you use a product designer. But then again, up to you to define yourself as a designer. Is then all about your design identity, right? You are UX designer who all focus on research and user experience, or you kind of like both worry about the business side of it, advocate for how you market your products, and also at the same time design the solution for them. So that is on both sides. That's how I'm seeing as like how you do as a product design. And at the end of the day, again, it's really up to you to do your design journey. And agree with Ryan too. Like, again, on my job at my job at Comcast, when I do voice, it's really like you really focus on the one product. So that's why you do everything to help your product better. But at the same time, on the other side of my organizations, my coworker who is UX designer, who jump from different project and work with different partners. So that's where you really focus on the user experience itself and not too much worry about the business side, right? And again, product design or UX design is really when you do the work. Like, you do have a metric that you can measure against it, or you're not. So that's how I see the difference between product design and UX design.
Thanks, Sean.
That's my contribution.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we're getting kicked out.
I wouldn't say getting kicked out.
I know.
So here in just a second, we'll be going back into the main room to start our second session. Keep in mind, the second session, you're free to move around between specializations, and you're more than welcome to come back to product design as well.
Do I have to hit stop recording, or does it automatically do that?
I believe it will automatically stop, but it would be awesome if you could punch the button again when we come back in.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. See you in the main room.
Thank you.
All
See you in the main room.